The text message hit my phone at exactly 7:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I was stirring my instant noodles, humming a forgotten tune when the screen lit up with my mother's name. My heart didn't clench. It didn't pound. It just registered. A familiar dread. A dull ache I'd learned to live with. Like a chronic back pain you no longer think to mention. But this time, it was different. This time, there was an edge to it. A finality. I swiped the notification open. We changed the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now. Haha. It was never. The ha-ha stung more than anything else. It wasn't just cruel. It was gleeful. It was a victory lap for a battle I didn't even know we were fighting. My noodles were still steaming, a sad little spiral of dehydrated vegetables and fake chicken flavor. I put my fork down. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. I read the text again. And then again. No home anymore. The words should have gutted me. Should have sent me spiraling into panic. Tears. Maybe even a desperate phone call to a friend. But they didn't. Instead, a slow, quiet smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile. Not really. It was a knowing smile. A grim satisfaction that settled deep in my bones because they thought they had locked me out. They thought they had finally won. But I knew something they didn't. And that something was going to change everything. The background. My name is Sarah Bennett. I'm 28 years old and I work as an accountant. It's a job where numbers make sense. Where things add up. Where there's a clear right and a clear wrong. My life, especially growing up, was never like that. Nothing ever added up. I was raised in Portland, Oregon, in a house that always felt too big and too empty at the same time. It was a 2-story home with a sprawling yard. The kind of place people call a dream home. For me, it was a work camp. My parents, Robert and Susan Bennett, had me first. 4 years later, my sister Chloe arrived. And that's when the subtle shift, the quiet reordering of our family universe began. When I was 14, the shift became undeniable. That's when I officially became the family's unpaid worker. It wasn't a discussion. It wasn't even a request. It just happened. My father, a man who loved to talk about character and responsibility, but rarely demonstrated either, informed me it was time I started contributing. Contributing meant manual labor. Hard labor. The yard alone was acres of lawn. My allowance, which had been minimal, disappeared. My new job was mowing that vast expanse every single weekend. Rain or shine, summer heat or crisp autumn mornings, the riding mower became my constant companion. While other kids were at the mall or the movies, I was breathing in gasoline fumes and pushing clippers along fence lines. "You're building character, Sarah," my mom would say, waving from the kitchen window, a warm mug of coffee in her hand. "It'll make you strong." Strong? I became. My hands were calloused before I was 16. My muscles ached constantly. But it wasn't just the lawn. Our house was old, always needing something. Character building extended to painting fences, a tedious task under the scorching summer sun. It meant climbing onto the roof to fix loose shingles, my heart pounding with fear, but my parents' voices ringing in my ears. Someone has to do it, Sarah. And that someone was always me. Meanwhile, Chloe was delicate. That was the word my mother used. Chloe was smaller, had fairer skin, and complained about the smallest discomfort. A chipped nail was a crisis. A slight breeze was reason to stay indoors. While I was hauling bags of concrete mix from the hardware store, Chloe was having tea parties in her room or getting her nails done with Mom. Chloe needs her rest. Dad. I'd hear if I ever dared to suggest she could help carry something. She's not as robust as you, Sarah. It wasn't just physical labor. It was an expectation. My school projects, which often required research and time, had to be squeezed in around my duties. If I ever tried to say no or even question the fairness, the response was always the same: a sigh, a look of disappointment from my mother, and a firm, low voice from my father. We provide you with a roof over your head, Sarah. Food on the table. Is that not enough? And then the comparisons would start. Look at Chloe. So grateful. So sweet-natured. You could learn a thing or two from her. The financial drain. Chloe rarely had chores. Her room was tidied by my mother. Her clothes were washed and folded for her. When she needed something, she got it. If I needed something, a new pair of shoes, a school trip fee, it was always met with a lecture about money, about how tight things were. Unless, of course, it could somehow be tied back to her delicate nature. Then resources flowed freely. I watched her sometimes from the kitchen window as I washed dishes, my hands red and pruned from the hot water. Chloe would be sitting on the porch swing reading a book or talking on the phone with a friend. No demands. No expectations. Just peace. A growing resentment simmered inside me, a quiet, bitter heat that I learned to hide beneath a veneer of dutiful silence. They wanted me to be strong. They wanted me to be a worker. So, I became one. But I never forgot who made me that way. And I never forgot the price. The unpaid labor was just the beginning. The real burden started when I turned 16 and began working part-time jobs. I worked at a fast food restaurant, then a bookstore, then a retail store, any place that would hire a high school student willing to put in the hours. My earnings weren't for a college fund or new clothes or even much personal spending. No. My earnings were for the house. It started subtly. Sarah, the electricity bill is higher than usual this month. Can you help out a little? My mother would ask, her voice soft, almost pleading. And I, still wanting to please, still clinging to the hope of their approval, would hand over a portion of my paycheck. It wasn't much at first. Maybe $50 here, $100 there. But it grew. Soon, it wasn't just helping out a little. It became an expectation. The mortgage payment is due. Sarah. We're a bit short this month. Or, groceries are so expensive. Could you pick up a few things on your way home? My paychecks, which felt so substantial when I first held them, would vanish almost as soon as they arrived. Over the years, from 16 until I moved out at 22, I poured tens of thousands of dollars into that house. I remember sitting down one night after a particularly grueling shift, trying to tally it up. It was impossible to get an exact figure without bank statements. But in my head, I knew it was huge. A significant chunk of my youth, my energy, and my financial future was being absorbed by the Bennett family home. I once tried to save for a used car, a beat-up Honda Civic. Nothing fancy. Just a way to get myself to work without relying on my parents. I saved for months, pinching every penny. When I was close, my dad came to me with a somber face. Sarah? The water heater burst. It's going to be a huge expense. We simply don't have it. This is a family emergency. My car fund was instantly converted into a new water heater. No apologies. Just a weary nod of thanks. Meanwhile, Chloe was living a completely different life. When she turned 16, there was no talk of getting a job. Instead, she got a brand new car for her birthday. A shiny red Mazda, complete with a bow. It's a safety thing. Mom explained to me when I looked at it. Stunned. She needs something reliable. My own reliable transport was walking or begging for a ride. Then came college. For me, it was a constant struggle for loans. I worked multiple jobs through my degree, graduating with a mountain of debt that I'm still paying off. For Chloe, we want her to focus on her studies, my parents declared. Her college education was fully funded. Every tuition payment, every textbook, every meal plan covered. She even got an allowance for living expenses. I remember seeing a picture on her social media once, Chloe on a beach in Cancun. A bright, happy smile on her face. Spring break. The caption read, "My spring breaks were spent working double shifts." The turning point. The unfairness of it all was a constant, dull ache in my chest. It wasn't just the money. It was what the money represented. It was their belief that my contributions were simply my duty, my burden. While Chloe's comfort and happiness were their priority, their investment, I was the reliable workhorse. Chloe was the cherished princess. I remember a specific conversation. I was 20, struggling with college and bills, and I had asked my dad for a small loan, maybe $500, to cover an unexpected textbook cost. He sat me down, looking stern. "Sarah, you need to learn financial responsibility. We can't just hand you money. You're an adult now." He lectured me for 20 minutes about budgeting. Later that week, I overheard my mom on the phone. "Yes, we just sent Chloe another $1,000. She wanted to go on that ski trip with her friends." My heart sank. Not because of the money itself, but because of the blatant hypocrisy. They weren't teaching me responsibility. They were teaching me my place. I was 26, living in my own small apartment. Still chipping away at my student loans. Still sending money home, just in case. They needed it for the house. It was a habit I hadn't been able to break. I visited on Sundays, mostly out of a sense of duty. That hope died one Sunday afternoon in the kitchen. It was an ordinary day. The smell of my mom's roast chicken filled the house. I was helping clear the table while my parents and Chloe were in the living room, or so I thought. I heard voices from the kitchen. Low. Hushed. But distinct. "The deed is only in our names," my mom said, her voice a little too loud in its whisper. "Legally, she has no claim." My blood ran cold. They were talking about me. Classic Sarah. My dad chuckled. A dry, dismissive sound. All heart. No business sense. Always so trusting. My hands tightened on the plates. Trusting. That was the word they used for my willingness to help. Then Chloe's voice. Bright and eager. Cut in. "She'll expect something when we sell. Though. Right? She always talks about how much she's put into the house." A pause. Then my mom's voice, dripping with something cold and calculating. "Let her expect. Expectations are not entitlements." And then they laughed. All three of them. A low, collective chuckle that reverberated through the kitchen. Through me. It wasn't a warm family laugh. It was a sneering, mocking sound. They were laughing about cutting me out entirely. About all the money I'd poured into their lives. Legally, she has no claim. I stood there, invisible in my own childhood home, hearing the raw truth of their betrayal. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. They were planning to discard me. The plate suddenly felt impossibly heavy. But I didn't cry. There were no tears. Just a searing, cold anger that started to burn through me, extinguishing every last ember of hope. The naive Sarah died in that kitchen. A new Sarah was born. One who understood. One who would not be dismissed. I carefully placed the plates back on the counter, making not a sound. I walked out of the kitchen, through the dining room, and into the living room, where they sat oblivious. "Everything okay, sweetie?" my mom asked, her face a mask of concern. "Just fine, Mom," I said, my voice steady. But inside, a silent war had just been declared. And this time, I wasn't just building character. I was building a case. The investigation. The very next day, my mind, trained in the methodical world of accounting, shifted into overdrive. This wasn't just emotional hurt anymore. This was a financial investigation. And I was the lead detective. My first step was to gather every single piece of financial evidence I could find. Luckily, I had been diligent about keeping records. I pulled up statements from my part-time jobs, tracing the deposits, then meticulously tracking the withdrawals and transfers. The direct bank transfers were the easiest to pinpoint. For years, I had regularly sent money to my parents' joint account. Sometimes it was explicitly labeled mortgage, other times house fund. But often it was just a simple transfer accompanied by a quick text from my mom. Got it. Sweetie. Thanks so much. I agreed. I started compiling these. Thousands upon thousands. $500 here. $700 there. Sometimes $1,000. After weeks of careful digging, I calculated over $47,000 had gone directly towards their mortgage payments. Next were the receipts. Oh, the receipts. I had a shoebox full of them shoved in the back of my closet. Every trip to Home Depot. Every purchase of paint. Lumber. New appliances. Landscaping supplies. The water heater. The new roof shingles. The upgraded windows. I had paid for the materials and often performed the labor myself. I scanned every faded receipt. Another spreadsheet started to fill up. $23,000 for improvements. Then came the utility payments. Another $15,000 during their hardships. Hardships that never seemed to affect Chloe's lifestyle. The total began to loom large. $47,000 for the mortgage. $23,000 for improvements. $15,000 for utilities. That was $85,000. $85,000 in cash that I had poured into a house that legally wasn't mine. But it wasn't just the money. My lawyer, Elena Vance, a sharp woman I'd found through an old college friend, had advised me to document everything. She explained that unjust enrichment cases could be built on more than just cash. So, I started a new document, a detailed log of my unpaid labor. I went back through my old calendars. I wrote down every weekend spent mowing, every fence painted. It was a staggering amount of hours. I also started collecting their text messages and emails, the seemingly innocent requests for money, the casual dismissals of my own struggles, the glowing praises for Chloe. I even saved screenshots of Chloe's lavish vacations. This wasn't just about money. It was about the systematic favoritism and emotional neglect. I was ready. I was waiting. My lawyer, Elena, had everything. It's a strong case for unjust enrichment. Sarah, she told me. But the best trigger, the thing that shows clear malicious intent, would be an overt act. Something that proves they intended to leave you with nothing. We both knew what that meant. I had to wait for them to lock me out. The judgment. The text arrived on a Tuesday. We changed the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now. Haha. My first reaction wasn't anger. It was a profound relief. They had finally done it. They had handed me the trigger. The ha-ha was a gift. It was the malicious intent Elena had been talking about, typed out in 3 gleeful letters. The next morning, at precisely 9 a.m., I called Elena Vance. They did it. Elena, I said, They changed the locks. I have the text. Wow. Elena whistled low on the other end. That's not just an overt act, Sarah. That's a confession gift wrapped with a bow. It shows glee. We filed this morning. The petition asked for a partition of the property, citing my significant financial contributions and their unjust enrichment. We asked for 50%. The number sounded bold, but I remembered the laughter in the kitchen. The summons arrived at their house on a Friday. My mother called me 37 times. My father called 12. Chloe sent a flurry of panicked texts. I blocked them all. A few weeks later, we were sitting in a sterile mediation room. My father, Robert, was red-faced. My mother, Susan, was playing the wounded matriarch. Chloe looked bored. This is a complete and utter farce, my father boomed. We gave our daughter everything. A roof over her head. With all due respect, Elena cut in, opening our binder of evidence. This is about equity. She slid the spreadsheet of bank transfers across the table. $47,852 in direct transfers. Then the receipts. Just over $23,000 in home improvements. Then the utility bills. Another $15,000. The room went silent. The narrative of the ungrateful daughter was crumbling under the weight of hard evidence. Chloe looked at me, a flicker of fear in her eyes. She was realizing just how much of her comfortable life had been subsidized by me. This is a misunderstanding, my mother whispered. There is no misunderstanding this, Elena said, placing the final piece of paper on the table, the enlarged screenshot of the text message. Eyes as God. Let's see how brave you are now. Haha. Mrs. Sterling, the mediator, frowned deeply. Upset enough to render your own daughter homeless and then laugh about it? Elena pressed. This proves you intended to take everything. Their lawyer knew it was over. He offered a settlement of $20,000. We refused. 50% ownership, or we see you in court, Elena stated. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing the video. It really helps me continue telling these stories. The failure of mediation meant court. The weeks leading up to it were ugly, but I stood firm. On the day of the trial, Elena was magnificent. She didn't rely on theatrics. She relied on facts. She built a picture not of a tenant, but of a partner, an investor who had been exploited. Your Honor, Elena stated. The defendants, Robert and Susan Bennett, have knowingly accepted over $85,000 in direct financial contributions from my client. They have been unjustly enriched. And then, the text message, shown on the large screen for the whole court. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman, read the text. Her expression hardened. I have reviewed all the evidence, she began. It is clear that the financial contributions made by the plaintiff were far beyond rent or gifts. Furthermore, the text message sent by Mrs. Bennett demonstrates a shocking lack of good faith. It is cruel, and it is damning. She paused. Therefore, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff. Sarah Bennett is legally awarded a 50% ownership stake in the property at 450 Pineview Lane. 50% ownership. I had won. The aftermath. My father roared. My mother sobbed theatrically. Chloe sat pale as a sheet. I just sat still. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. The law was on my side. Executing the judgment was the final step. My 50% ownership meant they couldn't sell or refinance without me. I offered to let them buy me out, but their pride wouldn't allow it. My father told me to go to hell. So, I forced the sale. The for sale sign going up on the lawn of my childhood home was a hollow victory, but necessary. They tried to sabotage the sale, but the market was too strong. An offer came in for $680,000. I signed. They had no choice but to sign, too. The closing day was brutal. We sat at the title company's office. Silence thick in the air. The agent slid a check to my parents, and then one to me. I looked down at the check in my hand. $340,000. My share. It wasn't just money. It was my youth. It was the price of every shingle I'd fixed. Every bill I'd paid. Every vacation I'd never taken. I looked up at my parents. They were staring at their own check in disbelief. After paying off the remaining mortgage, their share was significantly less than they had planned for their grand retirement. Their dream of cutting me out had evaporated. My father finally looked at me, his eyes full of pure hatred. I hope you're happy. He spat. You got what you wanted. I tucked my check safely into my purse and stood up. I looked him right in the eye. No, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You got what you earned. I walked out of that office without looking back, leaving them to sit with the consequences of their own choices.